Welcome back, book nerds. It is September, and I don't know about you, but I am very, very ready for fall. I've been in fall mode since I think the beginning of August, and we've had a little bit of cooler weather. We're in, I think, our last heat wave of the summer, so in my mind, we're in fall, but out there in the world, in my world, we're not quite there yet. So let's talk about the fall books that are coming out over the next couple of months because I'm ready. So ready. It looks like there are some really, really good books coming out over the next few weeks and couple of months, and I'm really excited to get my hands on most of these. And there seems to be a really good range too. There's a lot of good thrillers coming out, some good fantasies, some good lit fic. So I kind of got a little bit of everything. And I think I'm going to go genre by genre. So if there's a specific genre you're looking for, check the chapters down below so you can jump ahead to that section if you'd like. Or if you want to stick around and listen to me talk about all the books that are coming out, feel free to do that as well. First up are thrillers, and this first one comes out September 3rd. And this one's called Where They Last Saw Her by Marcie R. Rendon. And this one caught my eye because it's about a woman who lives on a Native American reservation. When she's out running one day, she hears a scream, and then she finds an earring and some tire tracks. So she decides to investigate, and as she gets closer in her investigation, there is another disappearance. And I'm not going to read the whole synopsis, but the final line in the synopsis is what really grabbed my attention. And it says, as Quill puts herself, her family, and everything she's built on the line to make a difference, the novel asks searing questions about bystander culture, the reverberations of even one act of crime, and the long-lasting trauma of being invisible. And so far, it's at a pretty solid 4-star rating on Goodreads. So this sounds like a really unique read. So that's Where They Last Saw Her by Marcie Rendon, and that is coming out September 3rd. Next up is The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden, coming out on October 1st, and I am a sucker for anything Freida writes. This one's about a young woman dating in New York. So the main character is dating this guy. He's handsome, charming, a doctor, and then the story of a pretty brutal murder makes the news, and this causes Sydney to have some suspicions. This one is described as a dark story about obsession and the things we'll do for love, proving that crimes of passion are often the bloodiest. So that's out October 1st, and that's The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden. Next up for thrillers, we have Society of Lies by Ling Brown, and this is an academic thriller, and that also comes out October 1st. This is a story that takes place at Princeton, and our main character's sister is in her final year at Princeton when she's found dead on the campus, and she doesn't quite believe that the story the police are giving is accurate in that it was an accident, and decides to do some investigating, and she ends up learning a lot about her sister that was kept hidden, including her involvement with kind of a secret society on campus. And it sounds like from the synopsis that this whole experience in trying to get to the bottom of what happened to her sister sends our main character Maya kind of back into her past and forces her to, or she's confronted with some things that she seems to have repressed or kind of kept buried. Next up for thrillers, we have The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Rekulak, which comes out October 8th. And this one is about an estranged father and daughter. And the father receives an invitation to his daughter's wedding after about 3 years of being no contact. So he attends the wedding and is trying to kind of reconnect with his daughter while also getting to know her new family and wanting to reestablish that relationship that they had. But something about the new family doesn't seem quite right. And so he's in this place where he feels compelled to investigate and protect his daughter. So he's walking kind of a fine line between looking out for his daughter and investigating, but also not pushing too hard and jeopardizing the steps that they've taken in reconnecting. And then on October 29th, this one has a very special place in my heart. By Emma C. Wells, comes out This Girl's a Killer, and I was lucky enough to read an advanced copy. I loved it. I was captivated from the start. I couldn't put it down, and I am hoping that we get more in a series because I want to see what comes next for Cordelia. Our main character is this kind of badass chic pharmaceutical rep, and she also has a secret storage locker where she kills terrible men. And this is her, this is her secret life, right? But then her best friend starts dating a man who she's getting, her feelers are up. She's getting some red flags, and things get complicated. So this was a really great read. It was captivating, it was fast-paced, and it was... So think like Dexter and Butcher and Blackbird, if you've read that, just without the spicy scenes, with a main character who's also got a really dry and sarcastic sense of humor, who's quick-witted and funny, and loves designer clothes. Also coming out on October 29th is The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins, and this synopsis reads, an isolated Scottish island, accessible to the mainland only 12 hours a day. This kind of gives me Daisy Darker vibes. A famous, some might say infamous, artist whose notoriously unfaithful husband disappeared after visiting her 20 years ago. A present-day discovery that intimately connects three people and unveils a web of secrets and lies. And this is described as a masterful and propulsive novel that asks searing questions of ambition, power, gender, and perception. So that one sounds interesting as well. Also releasing on October 29th is a YA thriller called The Debutantes by Olivia Worley. And this story centers around a masked ball happening at Mardi Gras in New Orleans. At the same ball the year prior, the queen is found dead the next morning. At the next year's ball, it kind of gets taken over by some mysterious figure in a jester costume. And then the next day, this year's queen, the new queen, goes missing. The synopsis kind of sounds like Pretty Little Liars, but with a debutante twist. And it sounds like a fun YA thriller. And next up, not quite a thriller, but it is marketed as a locked door mystery, is The Author's Guide to Murder, coming out on November 5th. And this is written by Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and Karen White. This one takes place in a Gothic castle on an island in the Scottish Highlands. And the owner of the castle turns up dead while there is a bit of a writer's retreat going on. Three women who say they're best friends who are working together to write a historical novel about the castle's past. But their stories don't quite line up, and the detective has to uncover what really happened. Next up, also coming out on November 5th, is You Can't Hurt Me by Emma Cook, and this one sounds really interesting. This one is the story of a journalist who's ghostwriting a book about a neuroscientist who does a lot of research surrounding pain. And he marries a former patient who was incapable of experiencing any pain. So as the ghostwriter is researching and trying to, craft this story, there are all kinds of secrets that come up and some truths that she unearths that are pretty shocking. And the last thriller on my list is coming out November 12th. It's titled Deadly Animals by Marie Tierney, and it's a YA thriller that is about a young girl who is really, really intrigued by the decomposition rates of animals, and so she collects roadkill from this stretch of highway by her house and studies how fast the bodies decompose. But one night she ends up finding the body of one of her classmates, and not wanting to reveal her own scientific interests, she anonymously calls the police to report it, and then is also kind of doing her own investigation parallel to the police. Okay, moving on from thrillers to fantasy, coming out September 3rd is Immortal Dark by Tigest Girma. And this is a YA fantasy that's described as being the Cruel Prince meets Ninth House. It's the first in a trilogy called the Immortal Dark Trilogy, and it's about an orphaned girl who her sister goes missing. And this is a society where humans and vampires have companionship, and humans actually gain power through their companionships with vampires. And so our main character is convinced that her sister was taken by the vampire companion that was bound to their family. And in order to investigate, our main character has to infiltrate the school where students study the kind of peaceful coexistence between vampires and humans. And the next up, coming out on September 10th, is the second in TJ Klune's Cerulean Chronicles series with Somewhere Beyond the Sea. This is the follow-up to House on the Cerulean Sea. And with this one, we return to the orphanage run by Arthur, who wants nothing more than to protect these magical orphans who just need somebody to love them and care for them. However, his past gets called into question, and he has to kind of defend himself in order to continue. I haven't read The House in the Cerulean Sea yet, but it is on my list. I've heard really, really great things about it, and this follow-up, the second in the series, has a lot of great reviews already. It's already at a 4.38 on Goodreads, and it hasn't even come out yet. And then coming out on October 22nd is Bloodguard by Cecy Robson, and this one is a gladiator story where our main character is working to save up enough money to rescue his sister who's dying, and he competes in these gladiator events in order to earn the gold that he needs. However, he's up against quite a challenge that he didn't quite anticipate, and ends up meeting a royal who can help him win this title. And with that title, he would also win his freedom. Next on my list is a cozy fantasy that comes out on November 5th, and this is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. And this is a story of a traveling fortune teller. She travels from village to village telling small fortunes having to do with the weather and, small town romance, but she avoids telling big fortunes because those bring bad news. However, one of her fortunes ends up turning into a big fortune unexpectedly, centering around the disappearance of a child. And so as she embarks on finding out what happens to this child, she also gains some companions to help her along the way. And last up for fantasy comes out on November 19th, and this is The Serpent and the Wolf by Rebecca Robinson. This is her debut fantasy, and according to Goodreads, it incorporates high-stakes political intrigue and a steamy slow burn enemies to lovers romance. Our main character ends up getting married off by her older brother, who is attempting to keep her from the crown. And in kind of a political power play, he marries her off to the ruler of a foreign land in an attempt to infiltrate and invade this other nation. Okay, and in my last category, I have a few kind of miscellaneous. I have a couple lit fic, a couple historical fiction, a memoir, and a couple rom-coms. So this is all just kind of everything that didn't fit into another category. Coming out on September 3rd is a lit fic titled Color Television by Danzy Senna. This one's about a struggling writer and her family, and they move into a very wealthy home to house it in the hills of LA, and this seems like the perfect opportunity to allow her to finish up her novel, which would earn her tenure at her teaching job. However, it's not quite working out. She ends up taking a deal with a producer for a streaming company to produce diverse content for their platform. And the last couple lines of the synopsis read, "She can create what he envisions as the greatest biracial comedy to ever hit the small screen. Things finally seem to be going right for Jane until they go terribly wrong." I don't typically go for historical fiction, but this one really caught my eye, and this is The Mesmerist, coming out September 10th by Carolyn Woods. And this one is all about hypnotism and mesmerism. So in 1894 in Minneapolis, there's this new wave of spiritualism, and all of these women start dying strangely. And it takes place at a home for unwed mothers where a new patient arrives, or not a patient, a guest. And the new guest is mute, so she doesn't speak. So her roommate is kind of tasked with uncovering her story. Because the new patient, Faith, is mute, there are a lot of rumors kind of circulating about her and her origins, and some rumors about kind of a magic and a mysticism that the roommate wants to kind of put to rest. Next up we have a YA dark academia novel, which is An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson, which on my list I didn't have written down that it's a YA fantasy, but it is. So when I'm editing, I should put this in the YA fantasy section. Note to self. And this is about a young girl who receives a phone call inviting her to take the entrance exam at a school for magic. So she passes the test and is kind of thrust into this new world where she has to learn how to harness her powers. Also, in kind of a strange turn of events, I have a memoir on the list, and that is Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. If you watched One Tree Hill, then you'll recognize the author of this one. And I never knew that she was in a cult. She was in a religious cult growing up. Not just growing up, but like in her time when she was on One Tree Hill. So this is her memoir kind of rehashing that. And that one comes out October 22nd. Coming out November 12th, I have Love in Bloom by Lucy Eden, and this is a rom-com about a woman who lives in the big city. She is in PR, and all of a sudden she unexpectedly inherits her grandfather's farm. And when she loses her PR job, she decides to give the farm life a try, and the farm also comes with a horticulturist who has been kind of taking care of the farm. There are a lot of people in the town that depend on the farm to survive, and so it is important for it to stay active and thriving. And so our main character has to kind of devise a plan with this groundskeeper to save the farm and apparently fall in love at the same time. And last on my list is another lit fic that comes out November 12th, and this is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers. This one also already has a lot of really high reviews on Goodreads. It's at an average 4.43 out of 204 ratings. And the synopsis for this one reads, "In all failed relationships, there's a point that passes unnoticed at the time, which can later be identified as the beginning of the decline. For Helen, it was the weekend that the hidden man came to Westbury Park. Croydon, 1964. Helen Hansford is in her 30s and an art therapist in a psychiatric hospital, where she's been having a long love affair with a charismatic and married doctor. One spring afternoon, they receive a call about a disturbance from a derelict house not far from Helen's home. A mute 37-year-old man called William Tapping, with a beard down to his waist, has been discovered along with his elderly aunt. It is clear he's been shut up in the house for decades, but when it emerges that William is a talented artist, Helen is determined to discover his story. Shy Creatures is a life-affirming novel about all the different ways we can be confined, how ordinary lives are built of delicate layers of experience, the joy of freedom, and the transformative power of kindness." And that one comes out on November 12th. So those are the fall new releases coming out over the next few months, and I had a really fun time putting this video together, doing the research. If this is something that you enjoyed, I might make this a seasonal thing. So let me know if that's something that you think you'd enjoy, and I'll definitely add it to my list of recurring videos to make. I'd love to hear what you are most excited for reading coming up in the next few months. What's your go-to genre for fall? For me, I don't know if you could tell, but from this list, but thrillers and fantasy are kind of my fall go-tos. So if you did make it all the way through, thank you so much for watching, and let me know down below what your favorite fall genre is to read. Until next time, happy reading, friends!